it's Jackie from Pocket of Preschool. I'm so excited you're here with me tonight. So tonight we are talking all about the first 10 days of school, kind of what to do, what to plan, what to leave room for, all of that good stuff. Because we know the first 10 days are honestly I think at least, they're like the hardest 10 days of the whole year because everybody's new. They don't know you, your kiddos don't know you, and you don't know your kiddos, which that's huge, right? So I'm just gonna share with you my lesson plans. We're just gonna kind of go through them, and feel free to ask questions as we go, and I'll hopefully answer them. If I miss your question, just pop it in again in case so I can see it again, and that'll remind me to answer it. But real quick, pop in the comments, have you started school? Do you start school in a week, 2 weeks? Do you go back like a lucky duck and go back in September? So kind of tell us when everybody goes back. Alrighty, so I think one of the first things I'm gonna start off with is all the links at the top. So at the top, you will find my blog post, and it has free editable lesson plans for you, or there's a PDF, like a just print. So they look like this. And it's the first 10 days. So like I used to teach full day and I use these. I would, each year you tweak them a little bit, but I would use these for the first 10 days when I taught full day 5 days a week. So I would just use them for the first 2 weeks. And now that I teach half day, it takes me about 3.5 weeks to get through them, or 3 weeks and like another week. It really depends on when school starts. What you can see me holding is my teacher binder. And my teacher binder is kind of like my lifeline. I did do a Facebook Live all on my teacher binder. You can grab it from my TPT store, I forgot to tell you the other link. So at the top is a link to my TPT store. You can find almost everything I'm talking about there tonight. I have lots of freebies to share with you. And there's a search bar on the TPT store if you're on the desktop, or in desktop mode if you're on a mobile device. And you can just search like all about me, or first day signs, or first day certificates. Go to desktop mode if you're on mobile, and it's a lot easier to search and to find exactly what you need in my store, because I have some really good first aid freebies for you guys. Yeah, and then also my newsletter sign up is at the top, and all my links to my old Facebook Live videos that I've done. So a couple weeks ago I did a Facebook Live on my teacher binder. And it's kind of like my lifeline. Like I have everything in it. Now y'all, I still haven't filled in any of the pages. But yeah, so it's got all my good stuff. So I'm just gonna turn to the lesson plan page, and I'm just gonna kind of go through the lesson plans. So I will say, the first 10 days or 2 weeks or the first month or whatever, I don't do a lot of center games. I do use my school centers pack. But I am mostly teaching routines. You'll hear me reference a lot of my character ed packs, and they all have visuals. So I basically teach a lot of those. Some days I don't even read aloud because we are practicing routines during circle time. And that's okay. You don't have to read a book during circle time. Now it's great if you do, but that first week, like we're just practicing routines. A lot of times I read a book that kind of goes along or teaches a routine or kind of talks about a routine, or gives us talking points to talk about the routine. So yeah. So on the first day when they come in, we're helping kiddos out with the morning routine. I put out magnet letters and cookie trays, something super easy that takes no direction, so I can help the kiddos who are crying, help the moms who are crying, help the families, help the kiddos. So yeah, so that first morning, you wanna have something that is super simple and not messy, because you don't know what kids like messiness. You don't know what kids gets freaked out by messiness. So have something that is clean, not sensory, and like easy peasy and super like fun and engaging. Like I put out magnet letters and cookie sheets because they stick, and kids love magnets, and they just happen to have letters on them. So I just put that out on table time in the morning, and I put a cookie sheet at every tray, and I just sprinkle all the letters in the middle, and I just say, hey, go have a seat, and then the parents can engage in the play a little bit, and then they can hopefully sneak out the door that first morning. Now, the first morning is hard, so the sooner you can get those moms and dads out, almost the better, I feel like, because the shorter the transition, I feel like the shorter like drama there is, and there's more anxiety the longer drop off is. So if you can kind of scoot those parents out really nicely pretty quick that first day, or if at open house they say, hey, my kiddo really struggles with like dropping off, say, you know what, why don't you guys practice it tonight? Practice like a high five, or do 2 hugs and a kiss or something like that. Have like a routine of the way they say goodbye, and then sneak out that door really fast, and then give them either your phone number or your email or some way they can get a hold of you, so that way that mom can call in 5 minutes when she's in the parking lot crying because she's scared to death her baby is upset. And you can hopefully call when she calls, and you can say, hey, she's, he or she is doing awesome. So that way, short goodbyes, if that's possible. I know some want to stay like all day with you, but yeah, so try and shorten those routines or those drop-offs in the morning if you can. And then for my first circle, we read, let me grab it. So we read Peep the Cat, Rockin' My School Shoes, because it's super short and it's super fun, and they can sing and they join in. I don't read a long book. I know some people love The Kissing Hand. I don't read it. Like, my 3-year-olds are doing really good to get through this. So I'm not gonna read a super long book on that first day, because we're also, during circle, we are also gonna practice our circle time routine and rules. So how many of you on the first day, the kiddos, they sit down at circle and they're like, blah. They just lay down, or they have their legs out. Like, some of them literally may have never sat crisscross applesauce before. So some of them, you're literally gonna have to physically help them put their body in crisscross, because crisscrossing your legs, that's hard for a 3-year-old if they've never done it before. They're crossing midline, that's a lot of motor planning. So in my circle time, where is it at? In my circle time character ed pack, I have visuals for rules for circle time. So that first day, we talk about how to sit crisscross, and we practice it. And I call it body check. I think a lot of friends from my old school, I don't know how, but we all called it body check. I don't even know where it came from. And we literally have the kids practice it. Like, I say, okay, lay like crazy, and everybody lays like crazy, and I go 1, 2, 3, body check. And they have to sit crisscross applesauce super, super fast. Like, it's like a game. And then we do that a couple times, and then that gets them excited about sitting crisscross applesauce. Now, if you have a kiddo who is unable to sit crisscross applesauce, let them participate too, and say, you know what? I love the way you're sitting, Billy, with your, like sitting on your bottom with their legs out, or however they need to sit, or maybe they're in a cube chair, or maybe they're using a device to help them sit, or maybe they have a parent next to them. But have those kiddos do it too. Like, they don't have to sit crisscross when you say body check. Maybe their body check just looks different. So you can talk about that. Totally use that as an opportunity to talk about how this friend sits this way, and that's how his body check looks. And this friend sits this way, and that's how his body check looks. Just use it as a time to talk about differences, and then celebrate those, and let them participate too. They can, let's say they can't move their, like maybe they're in a cube chair. Well, they're not gonna be able to throw their legs out crazy, but they can put their arms out, because part of them, maybe their goal is like have their arms down for circle. Maybe that's their body check. So you can kind of use that if your kiddos can't actually sit by crisscross. So just call it body check, and then everybody can do body check the way that their body can. And then we also talk about like raising your hand, which you know how well that works out for a while. Looking at the teacher, learning, because that's their job at circle, right? That's their job to learn. So I want them to know that, like, you're at school to learn and find out new things. So that's one of our rules. Like, that's their job to learn, and it's my job to read the book or whatever it is. And then use a quiet voice, like not scream at circle. So yeah, so that's what I do for the first circle time. That's usually the second circle time. Sorry, let me back it up. I had them backwards in my plans. The first circle time, we actually practice our morning routine. And I talked about this, I think, 2 weeks ago when I did the morning routine Facebook Live. So for the first circle time, so we read Pete the Cat on the second circle time. Sorry, I have 2 circles on the in my day. So the first circle time, we practice, or you could do it on the second circle time, whatever works for you. Practice that arrival routine, whatever it looks like, and use those visuals. It's all the way over there. I'm not gonna go run up and get it because I'm kind of surrounded. But have a visual for your arrival routine, whether it's put your things away. Ours is put your things away, answer the question, sign in, and then do the table time activity. So on that circle, I literally go over the routine and point using the visuals, and then I model it, so I pretend to be a kid, and I take one of the kids' backpacks and I go out the door and I come in and I talk through everything, and I'm like, okay, first I'm gonna put my backpack away, and I talk through all the steps, and I pretend I'm just a kid in the classroom. And then all the kiddos get up and get their backpacks, and they walk out the door, or or if you maybe can't go out the door, have them just sit by the door, and have them practice that routine. Do it 3-4 kids at a time. It's super quick. It's not anything that takes a long time, and you'll know that first day which kids to kind of call together. Hopefully that way you can pick out like a model kiddo who has got that routine down. You can tell the kiddos that first day they get that routine down super, super quick, whether they're the oldest in their class or that's just something that comes easily to them. So pick those kiddos to kind of go with the ones who linger a little bit and help them with that routine, and then practice cleanup. Or turn on the music and say, okay, remember, now when you hear the music, we're all gonna clean up, and then celebrate it. And then they'll be so excited. And now that second day they come in, that morning routine will be so much easier. Their parents will be super impressed with you, and it'll just make your day start so much better. And if you need to do that a couple times or randomly throughout the year, totally do that. And my visuals for arrival and dismissal are in my TPT store. Just search arrival and dismissal, and you can find those visual supports, because we all know those visuals are so helpful to kiddos. Okay, somebody is asking about the green and red choice cards behind me. Here's like a mini one, which I do go over these the first week. Those are in my TPT store. So go to the top, and I think they're like, it's like the best selling thing in my store, I think. So yeah, it'll be like the #1 thing in my store. All right, so, and then we just I love Jim Gill, and he has super fun songs. So I'm old school. I have not taken the time to put my CDs on anything fancy yet. So we do Jim Gill CDs for music. And I like those because it's loud, it's fun. He has a pretty quick beat to his songs. And like, my favorite one is Stick Like Glue. I love Stick Like Glue. It's like my favorite Jim Gill song, and they get to like interact with each other, and they get to hug each other and stick to each other like glue, and it's so fun. So for music, pick out those favorite songs that you know kids love. Don't pick something with a slow beat that first week, because you want to make school fun that first, second, third, fourth, fifth day, because that'll help those crying kiddos love school more. So the more fun you can have that first week, even though it's kind of boring with routines, the less they're gonna cry. When all the tears stop in the morning, everybody does like a happy dance, right? It's like a big celebration. So, all right. And then for the playground, I have a book. So I have a visual book, or a social story about how to be safe on the playground, and you can use the ones that are important to you. And we read it really quick before we go outside, or we go outside, literally sit in the grass and read like 3 pages. Like, we don't read all of this. It grows because I put it on like a book ring. So maybe we just read maybe it just has the pages. Hold on. Talks about being safe. Like, maybe we just talk about having gentle hands going down the slide. And we have swings, so we talk about staying away from the swings. So that first day, that's the whole book. That's it. And then I have all the kiddos. We all practice going down the slide feet first. I I don't care if they go on their bellies or on their bottoms, as long as they're feet first. So these visuals, and then I also have a rule, playground rules visual chart on our playground door. That way I can remind them before we go out every time. Because if a kiddo is used to going on the playground with mom and dad, let's face it, they're not gonna go down safely, some of them. They're gonna go down crazy, and we don't want anyone to get hurt on that first day of school, much less, day 10 or anything. So take 5 minutes when you get out on the playground, have them sit in the grass and read a quick social story. It doesn't have to be this one. I know, I think it's Dinosaurs Play Safe is the book, and it talks about how the dinosaurs play safe on the playground. So you can try reading that one, and it's a really quick read too, like maybe 5 minutes. But talk about those playground routine rules. And that first week, do not have everything out on the playground. Like maybe they're just playing on the equipment and using the sandbox, and that's it. Maybe you don't get out balls that first week, because it's gonna be enough chaos that first day, or first week or whatever it is, for them just to be playing safe and following the rules on the equipment. Sand in the sandbox, sand doesn't go in the hair, sand doesn't go in buckets all around the playground, things like that. So take 5 minutes, because trust me, those 5 minutes will save you bazillions years. And then what I do is then, as long as they're doing good with the playground things that we have out, like usually each Monday, I introduce new things. So maybe the second week of school, I bring out all the balls. And then maybe the third week of school, I bring out the wagon. And then maybe the fourth week of school, we get out like the chalk and maybe like the art easel that's outside. And then the fifth week, maybe we get out the bikes. But do it slowly. And two, it won't be so overwhelming. Some of these kiddos don't have all these amazing toys at home. So just having a playground, they're gonna be happy with that. Don't think you have to have everything out on the first day. Less is more on those first couple weeks. And then these are in my playground rules pack on TPT. So we're still on the first day. And then if we get in small group, sometimes we do that first day. Let's face it, sometimes we don't. I do All About Me activity, and we do the activity where they take off a shoe and they measure their shoe with cubes. And I do have an All About Me pack in my store. So you can make an anchor chart out of it, and then every time they go by it, they can talk about their shoe and how long it was, who has the longest shoe, who has the shortest shoe. Make sure you put your shoe in there, and anybody on your team in there that works in your classroom with you, put their shoes in there too. The kiddos want to get to know you guys just as much as that you need to get to know them. And they need to feel safe and comfortable. So make sure you guys participate in all the All About Me activities too. So, and sometimes if like those first 2 weeks, sometimes we do not get small group in, or we might get small group in and maybe it's 5 minutes. And that's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect those first couple days. Like, give yourself room to breathe. If you're running late, oh well. As long as, unless you're in a school and you have to have your playground time specific, make sure you do that. But otherwise, if you're running late, just breathe. Because you know what? There's always tomorrow. And as long as the kiddos are happy, healthy, and you're developing that happy classroom climate and community, that's all that matters those first couple weeks. At least to me anyways. Because if you have a happy, healthy classroom, that learning will come, and you'll have plenty of time to do it, because you're gonna have all these amazing kiddos who know all your routines, right? They're all gonna be just a little perfect. And I'm not saying that at all. So it was kind of a joke, couldn't tell. So even though we're practicing all these routines, it doesn't mean we stop. Like on day 10, no more routines. Like, nope, like we're done. Like, let's move on to learning. Like, no, you're gonna keep practicing these things all year long, especially after breaks. If you do a fall break or a Christmas break or winter break or spring break, you're gonna wanna review all these routines that week you come back. Another time I review routines is when kiddos are struggling with something, like maybe all the kids are throwing the mulch at each other on the playground. So get out your playground social story again and have a conversation. Have a class meeting and talk about, okay, like I see everybody throwing mulch on the playground. Like it makes me nervous because it can get in someone's eyes. How do you feel when somebody, and just open that discussion up, read read a social story, and hopefully that problem will get solved just by that little thing. Because once you do those first 2 weeks, and you need to have class meetings as they come along throughout the year, you'll already have that really strong groundwork, which once you have the groundwork and the foundation, right, the layers, it's easier to build and they don't fall as easy, right? If you don't have a strong foundation, from those first 2 weeks, if you don't build that strong classroom community, if you don't make sure to practice and teach those routines, your classroom's gonna fall apart because it doesn't have a solid foundation. It's just like a house, right? So build that strong foundation. It is not wasted time. The kiddos don't get bored. As long as you make it fun, learning those routines, they're gonna love it. So centers, I see a lot of people asking about centers. And I know there's all kinds of controversy around centers, and this is just the way I do it. So I color code my centers, and I only have 5. So I have art, library, pretend, discovery, and blocks. Obviously art is red, library is orange, and you can see. And then I have my centers labeled in my classroom with the same colored signs. So if a kiddo picks art, they grab an art clip, they put it on their shirt, and it's a visual reminder that they are in the art center. Oh, I'm missing one. Usually I do 4 kids per center. When I taught full day, I did 5 kids per center because I had 18 kids, and I wanted to make sure they had a choice, enough choices left to where they weren't stuck in a center because there were 2 clips left or something. So I did 5 clips per center, or 5 kids per center. But you kind of got to base it on your classroom, how many centers you have, and what works for you that year. Maybe some years you can have 6, maybe some years you can only have 4, depending on your mix of kiddos. So that's just what I do. But the first 10 days, and if you download my plans, I really, really map it out. I even have a post on my blog all about how to introduce centers. So after the first day, I actually, every day after that, I think it is, I need to really reread my first week lesson plans. I read a book about each center, and we really learn our classroom centers. So one day, do you guys have this book? It's Jack the Builder. It's one of those math start books. I love this book. He builds, and then he uses his imagination. Oh, and it's a counting book too. And then it turns into different things. But I like it because it's a kiddo in the block center building things. So we read Jack the Builder, and we actually brainstorm all the different things we can build, and I use my STEM cards, and we make a poster. We do, that way it's in the block center. You can always draw it if you don't have. I do have a blog post all about how to introduce centers and the books that I love to use for those, and I will drop a link to that. But if you go to my blog, and I think you click on teaching tips, it's in there. It says how to introduce centers. So I read a book. And obviously you can't read you can't read about every center that first day. So just use that 10 days and just slowly talk about each center. I try and read books about the centers that are the most popular. Usually it's blocks, usually it's pretend, or maybe it's the centers that are harder to clean up. Because also when I'm introducing these centers, we also talk about how to clean up. So there's a label on the bin, and there's a label on the shelf, and we talk about how they have to make that match to put it away. So if one of the centers is super messy or they're struggling with cleanup, I'll try and do that center first, because we don't start reading books about the centers until the 2nd or 3rd day. Since you have center time every day, whether it's the first day or the 10th day, what I do is I will put this in, I break my class up. Well, this year I only have 8 kiddos, so I take all 8 kiddos and we go sit in a center. When I taught full day and we had 18 kiddos, I took a small group, and then the other teacher took a small group, and we each sat in different centers. And we read through the questions, and we talk about what the center is called, and we do fun things with it. We'll be oh, clap it, blocks, stomp it, blocks, scream it, blocks, if we're in the block center. And we talk about all the toys. Some of the bins we'll get out and let everybody touch the objects, and then we put it back on the shelves. And then for that 30 minutes or that 20 minutes, whatever it is, however long your center block is, they get to go to 2 centers that first day, and the whole first week they only do 2 centers. So maybe the first part of the center time, they're in the block center. So you introduce the block center, you scream it, clap it, yell it, whatever, blocks, and then I read these questions. Like some of them are like, and I can put the link to this. This is in that How to Introduce Centers blog post. It's free in there. We talk about like, what is this? How do we use this? So, here's an art block. What can we do with this? Oh, here are these construction vests. What do you think we use those for? What can you be here? Can you be a builder, an architect, in the block center? If you're in discovery, you can be a science or a mathematician. What can you do in this center? What do you do when you're finished with this? How do you know where to put it? And we really point out that there's a label on the bin and there's a label on the shelf, and it has to match. And then all the stuff that we got out when we're talking about all these things, then the kiddos, we put them all away, and then the kiddos will play in that center for I have an hour block, so we'll talk about the center for 10 minutes-ish. Sometimes it's less, just depends on how chatty they are. And then they play in that center for 20 minutes. And then either I switch to groups when we did full day, or now that I'm in half day, we just all get up and we can move to another center, and then we do the same thing. So then maybe we move to pretend and we do the same thing. We go through the same questions. I will say it is super boring for the teacher, and it is tricky for some of the kiddos, but for the most part, the kiddos are pretty much okay with just playing in that one center because they're excited to see what's in that center. And I know it sounds boring because they're gonna wanna wander around, and yeah, my 3-year-olds are gonna wander a little bit, but I just say, hey, come back. Hey, I see Billy's playing with, these blocks, and he made a tower taller than his head. Let's go measure it. Let's see if you're taller than that tower. And just get him to, nicely come back over to the center. And this is my 13th year teaching, I think, and I've never really had an issue with kiddos like having a temper tantrum on the ground. Because they want to go to that center. And if they are upset that they don't get to go to that center, I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to write that down. Let's do this center first tomorrow, or I'm going to go to first. And usually that calms them down and they're okay. So yeah. And then, so we do that, we introduce it the first time. It takes about 2.5 days. We go back and we do it again. And this time we just ask a little bit of different questions. It's a little bit shorter. But what will happen is after you introduce it for however long, like it could take 5 days. If you have littler kiddos, you may want to do it longer. You may want to do 7 days. I kind of do it different every year. Sometimes I take 5 days, sometimes I take 7. It really depends on the kiddos, because when it's time for centers, my kiddos get to pick where they want to go. And I have this chart up, and they talk to each other about where they want to go, what do they want to do, and then they come up hopefully with a partner and say, hey, I want to go here, because I want kids playing with each other. And if they don't, if they want to go to blocks all by themselves, that's fine. So they get to pick. So I'll call up, hey, Bobby, where do you want to go? Oh, you want to go to library? Okay, here you go. Well, once you've introduced those centers, the kiddos know what's in that center. So they're gonna go, oh, I wanna go to the library because I wanna play with those letter popsicles, because they're gonna remember what is actually in library and where it actually is in your classroom and what color it is. Because if you don't take that time to introduce your centers, it can probably be a little chaotic, because they're gonna go, oh, I wanna go to blocks, and they'll walk over there and they'll be like, that's not where I wanted to go. I wanted to play with the magnets. And the magnets are in discovery. So then they'll come back, or maybe they'll just wander over there. So we want to develop that self-regulation. So the more they can get to know the centers and get to know the center names, the longer they'll play and the more engaged they'll be, and the less behaviors you're going to have, because you're not going to have kiddos wandering around the classroom, because they're going to know what's in the center. And that way, if they want to do the letter popsicles, they're going to go to the library and do the letter popsicles. If they want to play with the shaped cookies, they're gonna know those are in discovery, and they'll pick discovery and go over there. And my kiddos, I let them switch as much as they want. And I don't make them switch either. So if they pick a center and they play in there for the whole center time, that's awesome. I think that's awesome because that tells me that they have, they're increasing their attention span and their time on task is increasing, and if they're playing that long, their level of play is a lot higher than if they're playing with one thing for 5 minutes, one thing for 5 minutes, one thing for 10 minutes, one thing for 3 minutes. Their level of play is higher because now they've been playing with something longer, so they're gonna get more involved in their play. And my classroom is mixed age, and when I taught full day, I had 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in one classroom, and now my half day classroom is 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, so it's multi-age for both. Yes, so Andrea says she mixes her kiddos too, that way the older ones can help the younger ones. And the older ones love helping the younger ones. Plus, they have to verbalize their thinking, which is a higher level. They have to like say, hey, let's go do this. It's in this center. And they have to kind of negotiate, which is higher level thinking, right? Which is a win-win. So the other thing we go over a lot are, I don't know if you can see behind me, are green and red choices. I don't know if you can see them. Okay, so I have green and red choices behind me. I also, where did my mini one go? Here's my mini chart. So we talk a lot about green and red choices. Like I think one of the books we read is like No David Goes to School, or so some of those books that are really great at talking about rules, and they're in my lesson plans if you wanna check those out. But we talk about what are green choices that we make, and they all have visuals. As you can see, they all have visuals, and my green choice chart is bigger than my red choice chart. And a lot of times at the beginning of the year, my red choices, I don't even have a lot, and my green choices, I don't have a lot. I have the basics. Because looking at that, or this, is super overwhelming. So I just have the basics. I might have like no yelling, no pushing, and no kicking. And I'm not gonna give them ideas, so I don't put all kinds of crazy stuff on here. If they're not doing it, I'm not gonna say, oh, it's a red choice to spit at your friends, because what's gonna happen? Oh, the next day somebody gets mad, they're gonna go, oh, I can spit. That's a great idea. That sounds fun. That'll get a rise out of my teachers. So I don't wanna give them those ideas. So I keep my red choices to a minimum, and then we slowly introduce our green choices. And I actually have an entire video on green and red choices. So if you go up to the top, and I can put it in this post in the bottom after I'm done. But I have a whole Facebook Live on how I introduce and teach green and red choices, because using green and red choices, it makes it, and I use colors, so green means go, keep those green choices coming, and red means stop, so stop that red choice, right? Because it's just a great visual for them, since, stoplights. And if you play like red light, green light, that also helps too, them to know like go and stop. But when you say, oh, that's a green choice, like that's awesome, they get really excited. But if you say, oh, that's a red choice, they go, oh, that's a red choice, and they can stop. And then if you need to, you can use the visual, be like, oh, it's a red choice to yell. Can you fix it and make it a green choice and use your inside voice or quiet voice, whatever you call it. And that way you're making it about the choice. You're not saying, oh, that's bad, because the second oh, that's a bad choice. Because the second you say bad choice, they're gonna take it as they're a bad kid. And they're not a bad kid if they make a bad choice or a red choice. Like, they just made a bad decision. And let's face it, all of us in life make bad decisions and we come back from it. But that could be enough to ruin their entire day. Whether it's the kiddo who's always making red choices, or the kiddo who is perfect and they make one red choice the entire year. And if you say, oh, that's a bad choice, and they melt and they're done for like a week. Because they're, that kiddo who's like amazing and always does the right thing. So it can be detrimental for both types of kiddos, or those kiddos who are, they make green choices most of the time, but occasionally it happens. Everybody makes a couple red choices. Everybody has bad days. Or days where they're crabby, or didn't get sleep, or their dog died, or it was Halloween the night before, or they're tired, or whatever it is. Or their parents are going through a divorce, or whatever. So I make it about the choice. I say, oh, that's a red choice. Can we fix it? And we make green and red choice charts, and it's all in here. I actually totally map it out for you. But that way, it's, again, about the choice. You're not saying you're a bad kid. They're not interpreting it as you're a bad kid. And there's tons of visuals I give you. There's tons of books you can use. So I give you tons of ideas. I know some of them are seasonal because, you know, during the seasons, we go back and we review all these choices, green and red choices a lot. I know some teachers like to make necklaces, so that way they have a visual on them, and they can say, oh, this is a green choice, and they have it right there because it's on their neck. There's also a class that you can read and then put in your classroom library, and you will hear the kiddos once you start teaching green and red choices. And I even have like positive like behavior slips that you can send home. I do have whoops, my binder must have broke. I do have sticker charts if you're a sticker chart person, or maybe you're required to do some kind of like behavior chart. I have those in there. I don't use any of them. I don't use the sticker charts. I don't use the sticker charts if you want to use those. And it also comes with the behavior charts if you need those, like if you're required to use those, or maybe that's something you do, or maybe that's something you're required to do, or maybe one kiddo needs that. Everybody doesn't have to have a behavior plan. Maybe one kiddo needs one. And just, it's not a big deal. Just keep it on a clipboard and keep it in their cubby, and it just becomes part of the routine to check it, and it's not a big deal. So, because they work for some kiddos. But honestly, they're a lot of work for the teacher, and if I don't need to do them, and if kiddos are regulating themselves and I don't need to give them a tangible reinforcer like a sticker or a smiley face or something, I don't want to do it, because that means I'm decreasing their level, right? Because they didn't need a reinforcer before, and now I'm giving them one. So we don't want them to go backwards. Yeah, I do sneak in some assessments that first week. We do a sign-in every morning. And so I keep those sign-in sheets, and I keep them for their portfolios. So don't be afraid to do a little bit of assessments that first week, because they grow, or the first 2 weeks, or 10 days or whatever, because they grow so fast. So I also love, have you guys seen this one? It's Todd Parr's new book, Be Who You Are. We read this one, and then we everybody makes a self-portrait. And why I think it's important to sneak in some assessments that first 2 weeks, one, it helps you get to know your kiddos, and two, it gives you a baseline, right? Oh, and so I guess that's kind of number one again. But, and two, it starts you off on the lowest level possible, because even that second week, that third week, kiddos are gonna start to grow. And I wanna make sure I have that lowest level documented. That way in December or November, whenever you do parent-teacher conferences, I can be like, look, this is where they started, and here's where they are now. So I do a self-portrait in August, and the only other assessments I do those first 10 days are, I do a letter identification, number identification, and I do count colors. And then I do sneak in a counting one if I can sneak it in just through observation during small group time. But if I can't, that's okay too. So yeah. And then as far as notes I send home, I do send home like a welcome home packet. I'm checking the time, sorry guys. I send home a welcome home packet, or like a get to know you packet on that first night, and I put a letter about green and red choices in there, because that way parents know, and that way they're starting to use that language. And I do send them a note home about our rules. And I don't know if you can see them. They're over there. Let me see. We take care of ourselves, each other, and our school. So I send a note home about our rules, and then what the different things look like. So that way we're on the same page on that. So I send them a note about rules, about just typical classroom procedures, and then that's usually about it. I try and keep my notes home in August to a minimum, because they're getting so much paperwork, it's gonna get lost in the shuffle. So like if there is a literacy handout I have, I will keep that and wait until September, or until that first month is over, until the paperwork is kind of stopped, and so that way they actually read it, because they're not overwhelmed with paperwork. Because I know as a mom myself, there's so much paperwork that comes home those first 2 weeks. It's insane. So I try and keep the paperwork to a minimum, and then I give them more paperwork, or maybe I'll send something home again. Maybe I'll send home the green and red choices note again and says, hey, just want to remind you guys, here's what we're doing for behavior. And I might say like why I'm sending it home again in my newsletter, like, you know, like we're celebrating, you know, making all these green choices the first, 10 days of school. I just wanted to send you guys this home. That way you can celebrate it at home too with your child. So don't make it a negative thing. You're sending home a note again. Like just, say, hey, I'm sending it home again. And maybe they'll read it the second time if they didn't get to read it the first time. Or maybe they'll read 5 more sentences from it the first time if they only glanced at it the first time. And then some other things. Oh, one thing that I do the first week is I have no paint at the easel. None. Zero, zilch. Because that first week, we're just trying not to cry the first day. And, just getting all those routines down. And there's so many exciting things. So I actually keep the paint until the second week of school. So that way art is super duper exciting the second week. And I read, y'all, I love this book. I Ain't Gonna Paint No More. And it talks about where you paint. Do you paint yourself? Do you paint the floor? Do you paint the ceiling? No. You paint paper. But it's a really silly book. It's like a song book. So I know it's on YouTube too. So if you have a smart board, you can put it on YouTube and they can like sing it and watch it. Or at least there used to be one last year anyways. And then I have on my website a free art easel routine visual. So make sure you go download that. Actually, if you just go to my store after this and click on, make sure you're in desktop mode, otherwise the categories don't show up in the side, and click free resources. I have like an art easel routine. I have just some other really fun first day of school routine, or first week of school freebies. I have like also a freebie for your bulletin boards. So that way, if they're blank, you can just plop this sign that says like student work coming or something. That way they're not blank. That way the parents don't think you're a slacker. That way they know they're just waiting for your kiddo's work. It's not because you're a slacker and you didn't come in all summer or you didn't touch anything all summer. Because y'all know we work all summer, or at least some of the summer, on our school stuff. If parents only knew how much we did. So I don't have the paint out. Long story short, don't have paint out the first week of school. And then I have it out the second week, which makes it more exciting. And I take the whole class over to art. And I put on the kid art smock, and I model how to paint. And then everybody takes a turn that time when they're in art, painting at the easel. And that way I can help them. And that way, hopefully, in a couple weeks, you'd be surprised. With that visual, some kiddos can be independent at the easel within a couple weeks. Some, if they're super smart, like, the oldest kid in your class, some of those kiddos, or famous kiddo you had from last year, they'll be independent at it already. So make sure you give those kiddos those visuals, because when they're independent, there's less time you managing them and helping them with like things they can do, and that way you can spend time playing and learning with your kiddos. Another center I love to introduce is in Discovery. I read a book. We do an anchor chart and talk about all the different parts of a scientist, and we read a book, and it's in the lesson plans. I can't remember it off the top of my brain right now, but it's another freebie, but that one's on my blog. And we talk about all the different science tools like magnifying glasses and microscopes and things like that. After we do Pete the Cat, I have this fun, but this is in my school centers pack. It's like a t-shirt mat, and they roll the dice and they put that many buttons on the shirt. And if you have like maybe 2-year-olds, they can just put buttons on the shirt. Or maybe if you have kinder kiddos, they can use a bigger dice, or maybe they can use 2 dice. So roll 2 dice. Add it, and then put the total on, or you can make it a fine motor activity where they're just using tweezers to put the buttons on the shirt. So that's really fun. So I do sprinkle in some learning activities, like center-ish learning activities. It's not all routines. I also have these like Play-Doh mats, or you can use them as dry erase mats or with mini erasers. I usually use, I think these are for table time. But they're just little letter cards all about back to school, and we make those either with mini erasers or Play-Doh or dry erase. And I will say you gotta practice using dry erase. So almost make it a small group because dry erase markers are permanent. Teach them how to put it on, put the cap on, put the cap off. Because I think sometimes we forget how many things some new kiddos coming in don't know how to do. So like I said, breathe that first week. If you run late, because you find all the kiddos have never used dry erase markers and you need to really quick model and introduce how to use dry erase markers, take that time to do it now. That way you don't have permanent marker all over your classroom later, or permanent marker on their clothes and then mom and dad are not happy. So, or maybe they don't know how to use a glue stick. So create an activity. I usually do the first week I do paint, what are those, paint strips? We cut paint strips and do like a paint strip cutting collage, and we, to help everybody learn how to use a glue stick, and not the whole glue stick in one spot, how to use it appropriately in the right amount and things like that. Does anybody have any questions? Jenny says, ooh, Roxanne, I use Science Tools is the science book. Thank you, Roxanne, I love that book. Yes, I forgot to grab my science stuff before I came over here to my spot. The fire drill. So long story short, I had a kiddo one year who was so scared of a fire drill, she would literally climb me and shake compulsively, like scared to death, very traumatic. She didn't want to come to school for like 2 days, the rest of the week after we would have a fire drill. So I was trying to figure out a way to help her. So I made a social story and I made a fire drill routine, and it helped. And we also actually added earmuffs because she didn't like the sound. So before you have that fire drill, whether it's the second day or the 5th day, or hopefully not the first day, read the fire drill book, because most likely your kiddos will have never experienced a fire drill. And if they have never experienced a fire drill, it's super scary. So read this book. It's super simple. It's a social story. It tells them what to expect. The alarm will be loud. There isn't a real fire, all of that. And then practice the practice fire drill. So take your kiddos and practice the fire drill. You model it first, read the social story, you model it, and then have the kiddos practice it before the entire school does it. Because when I taught full day, I was actually in a high school. So all of the entire high school would come out, and you want to talk about high anxiety? I had anxiety when we would have these. But 2, it would be super scary for kiddos too. So we would practice it, and then that way when it would happen, they wouldn't be so scared. Natalie asked, do I put counting stews in the first couple weeks? And I'll probably gonna wait until that 3rd week to kind of put a stew out, depending on how my kiddos are doing. I did grab the science book, so this is an awesome science book. Well, that one's a camera, but it says, I use Science Tools. And then another one I love is, what is a scientist? And then here's the science. So you make it with your kiddos, and it talks about your 5 senses, but it also talks about how scientists use tools and they use their brain. So this is in my new science bundle. And there also is an I Am a Scientist book. If you didn't want to buy a book, you could just buy the science pack. It's called Being a Scientist. And I know everybody's like super excited about science. But it says I am a scientist and I make predictions. And then there's a little bit more text if your kiddos are ready for that. And then I am a scientist and I ask questions. I am a scientist and I use my senses to learn, investigate, and explore. So it's super simple. So if you don't want to buy a paperback book, you can buy the science pack and you have your own book. When school starts, I won't have this chart up in my science center. I won't have any of it made. I'll have a waiting for your work poster in the science center, and then we'll make this as a class when we introduce the science center. So I've actually been using the lesson plans that I'm giving you guys that are editable. I've been using these for around 7 years. I do tweak them every year, and I kind of have a really good ones that I love. So I really don't change them that much anymore. Cause after teaching for this long, you kind of know those first 2 weeks, what they look like. So yeah, so they're tried and true lesson plans. Like they're good ones. But I do not have lesson plans for the rest of the year because I'm going to be brutally honest that I teach different things at different times every year. I might do the same themes, but I might do different activities based on the kiddos I have and what they need at the time. So maybe a kiddo needs stuff about letters, so I do a little bit of stuff I'll do more stuff with letters. Maybe they do not understand rhyming at the beginning of the year, and we work a lot on rhyming, or maybe I hold off, or different things happen at different times. Or maybe our fine motor is really strong one year, so I don't have to do a lot of fine motor. Maybe it's really weak, so I have to do extra. So that's why I don't post lesson plans for the whole year, because mine literally change every single year, and I sketch them in at the beginning of the week, and half of the time they're different by the end of the week. All right, well, you guys have an amazing night. Thanks for hanging in there with the tech issue with the signal going in and out. And yeah, if you need anything, pop a question in or hop over to the group and ask a question over there. Make sure you guys are sharing in the group too, all this really cool stuff about how everybody's getting back. It just gets everybody all pumped up and excited. And if you aren't in the group and you want to join the group, the link is at the top of this post. So you guys have a fabulous night. See ya!